Welcome to Cal Talks. This is Marcelo Valau, Forge Extension Specialist with the University of Florida. And this is our podcast, where we dive into the main topics affecting livestock and forage production in the southeastern United States. Join us in this journey as we tackle the main issues affecting our producers and the sustainability of our production systems. Welcome to Cal Talks, the podcast that dives into livestock and forage production agriculture in the southeastern United States. I'm Marcelo Valau, Forge Extension Specialist and Associate Program Leader with the University of Florida. And today I have two illustrious guests and colleagues with whom I've worked in the past 2 years to develop a product that we're very proud of. We want to share a little bit with you. Dr. Diwakar Vyas and Dr. Adesogan, Adegbola, my colleagues from Animal Science, with whom we organize the 20th International Silage Conference that we hosted in Gainesville, Florida, July this past year, 2025. Diwakar, Bola, thanks for joining me today here.
Thanks for having us,
Thanks
Marcelo.
for having us. Thank you.
So this event was something that really mobilized a lot of people here in Florida and across the world. It's a classical event, is in the 20th anniversary now, hosted here in Gainesville. What is the origin of the Silage Conference, Bola, and how it came to be here in Gainesville at the University of Florida?
Thank you. Thank you, Marcelo. The Silage Conference series started in Britain, in London. Well, I'm not sure it was London, but somewhere in the United Kingdom, 20 years ago. And some researchers got together and said, look, this is a very important subject, and we need to pull together experts so we can learn from each other, we can network, and we can develop, best practices for producers. So that's how it started. And over the years, for the first maybe 6 or 7 years, it was in the United Kingdom, in the UK. Now, after that, they moved it to other European countries. And for the first time, it was hosted in the US in 2009. And then Brazil, I think about 2015. And then there was one in Germany, and then China. You asked how it came to be here, how it came to Florida. So we have an amazing forage team here, and we have had for many years. I never had an extension appointment, but one of the highlights of my work, one of the greatest privileges of my work as a professor at UF was working with people like Woody Larson and Don Bennick and so on, and our producers, learning from them, discussing, hearing about their problems and going to find solutions. And in the southeast here, particularly in Florida, the same climate that makes the snowbirds come here makes it very challenging for silage production. And I wanted to, showcase the talent, the expertise that we have here among our faculty, showcase the ingenuity of our producers, and how, despite living in a very challenging environment for silage and for cattle production, they're doing a fantastic job. And so I reached out to Diwakar, I reached out to Marcelo, and to several of our colleagues in agronomy, animal sciences, and said, guys, we're thinking about this silage conference. Should we host this event? And I got a very resounding thumbs up. And that was very encouraging. And so then on behalf of the team, I wrote to the committee and said we would like to host. And they agreed. And then I think at that point, I thought, what have I, on behalf of the team, let us in for? But now that we've done it, it was amazing.
I would just like to add what Bola shared. So thankfully, he brought a silage conference to the University of Florida. And when he reached out to us, he never told us that would be such a big affair, because we thought, okay, silage conference, 400 members, not a big deal. But you just shared the statistics, Marcelo, like 37 countries. You just listen to that number and then you just say how big that scope was.
Like you said, Marcelo, we're very, very grateful for all those who came from all over the world, literally all over the world. I think we had how many delegates?
So we had 330 attendees at the end. We had a little more than that registered, but not everybody was able to attend, unfortunately, especially because of some visa issues. We had 37 countries attending, representing, I think is 141 institutions, organizations, companies that were represented here. It was truly people from all over the world that came to share their thoughts in contacts and networking here in Florida with us. Just as a matter of numbers here, United States, of course, we're hosting, so we had most delegates, but Germany, Brazil, Mexico, United Kingdom were heavily represented here, but Italy, China, Czech Republic, Finland, and Canada were the 10 countries that had the greatest number of delegates represented here at the conference. I just want to mention this. It takes a lot of effort for us to put together a conference of this size here. It's a lot of human resources involved. We're blessed to have a great team from the University of Florida IFA's Office of Conferences and Institutes that helped us a lot through Jessica Bailey and the team with Jessica and Beth, and also the Forge team here with Ashley and all the students we have. But we would not be able to do this without our sponsors. I just want to make a quick shout out for our sponsors of this conference, because it really took a lot of people to make this happen. Latin Animal Nutrition, Bone Silage, Novanesis in Cumberland Valley Analytical Service were our diamond sponsors. Hay and Forge Grower, EcoSeal, Eastman, and John Deere are our gold sponsors. Eurofin, Standard, Dairy Consultant, and Passion Ag, our silver sponsors. And our bronze sponsors are Pioneer, Zimpro, Dr. Piper, Dairyland Lab, W Animal Care, and Winter Steiger. Of course, we're supported by the Visit Gainesville, Atchison County, and by our respective departments, animal science and agronomy, as well as of the office, the Dean of Research and the Office of Research from the University of.
Just like you acknowledge our sponsors, acknowledge the Office of Conferences and Institutes that did a phenomenal job, Jessica and Beth supporting us, and the Forage team, you, Marcelo, you, Diwakar, and of course, Ashley, you did the heavy lifting. And thank you. We could not, absolutely not have done it without you. So thank you very much. Also want to acknowledge the scientific committee that helped us to put together the program, the abstracts and everything, and the continuation committee that makes sure these conferences go on.
Florida. So we were just discussing here, we're very, very busy during the conference, and we probably didn't enjoy as much as we would like, but there were some remarking speakers coming to Gainesville to share their knowledge and perspectives with us. Diwakar, from the talks you were able to see and pay attention when we were not running around, what are the things that really impacted you? What are the things that most caught your attention from this conference?
That's a difficult question, Marcelo, because as you already said, we were so busy during the conference, just making sure that everything flows smoothly, all the logistics fall in place. I would definitely like to share something that stuck out for me. And what I would like to share was that the preparation for the Silage conference started about 3 years back, even before the Beijing Silage conference was organized. So we wanted to make sure that we really showcase University of Florida. And thanks for the team. It was such a productive team that we had a very successful Silage conference, and all the 3 years of hard work, I think, was paid off. So having said that, the goal of the Silage conference is definitely from last 55 years has been to share research, has been to share cutting edge science in the areas of forest preservation. And this year was not an exception at all. I mean, we had, correct me if I'm wrong, Marcelo, close to 100 abstracts. Yeah, so something like that. I don't have the exact number, but definitely it was very well represented, both with the oral presentations and the poster presentations. Was able to catch up on some of the talks. One of the speaker that I definitely remember is Dr. Tim McAllister's presentation on the food waste. And that gives a very new perspective on how we can use some of the waste products and they can go towards the fermented feed for livestock. That has a huge potential, considering about 30 to 40% of food waste that is being generated in the US itself, and forget about on the global scale. So again, the potential is huge on that part. However, Marcel, if I just focus on some of the very practical applied aspects for our stakeholders, for our producers, I think 2 or 3 areas of research, they really stuck out for me. And the first one was the use of oxygen barriers for silage making. The research is being done, I think, from last 30, 40 years, Bola, on the barriers. And it looks like every year we have something new that comes out. So this year, I think there were a couple of abstracts they were showing the efficacy of these oxygen barriers compared to polyethylene layers that have been used in the past. And they are very effective. They do improve fermentation efficiency. The dry matter losses go down. So I think that was a pretty strong take home for our producers.
Yeah, I was very surprised by some of the data. Actually, Dr. Briani showed a
Huh?
lot of the data from silage, from the processing of ensiling, and how that can make a huge effect into what you are getting out of that
Yeah.
silage. I mean, you can have very good material coming in, you don't pack it properly, you don't treat it properly, you go cheap on some of the oxygen barriers, it's going to spoil, it's going to reduce your milk production, it's
Yeah.
going to cost you a lot more money.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, these are very small managemental aspects that sometimes producers do tend to overlook because they think, okay, covering the silage with the polyethylene should be okay because everything is, not permeable to oxygen. But maybe that's not the case.
Correct. I would like to go back to that presentation from Dr. McAllister because it really also struck me. There's food waste and food loss, and both of those have a huge impact in agricultural production and also in hunger in the world. While we're wasting crops here, people go hungry. Not only cows, we're talking about other people. You've been all over the place. You have a very extensive international program. How do you see the potential of silage to help people improve productivity, especially in the global south, as you often refer to? And how can that help really getting people out of poverty?
Thank you, Marcelo. Excellent question. I think more than ever before, it dawned on me as we prepared for and hosted this conference that silage is a vital key to alleviating food insecurity and poverty in developing countries in the global south. I'll give you some examples. So, earlier this year, I was in Rwanda and I was told that 2% of children drink milk. 2% in Rwanda. In Ethiopia, milk is unaffordable. And as we probed the underlying causes with them a few weeks ago, we discovered that they hardly feed any forage to dairy cows. Their diets are mainly supplements, concentrates, and byproducts. And so, no wonder the milk is so expensive that it's unaffordable. Now, in the US, in Europe, for many years, we have realized the opportunity to use forage to do several things. One, to reduce the cost of the ration. Two, to supply digestible fiber. And depending on the forage, you can also supply energy, readily fermentable energy in the form of starch or sugars, or protein, if you're talking of alfalfa or some of the legume silages. And in most of Africa, silage utilization for beef or dairy cows is negligible. And there is huge potential. And that's not one of many reasons why the productivity of those animals is much lower than in the US. So, a cow here would produce how many pounds, Diwakar, on our dairy?
Yeah, 80 to 90 pounds
80 to
easily on an
90
average.
pounds. In many of the African contexts, you are talking about 10 pounds, maybe some of them 5 pounds. There are many reasons: indigenous breeds, poor management, health, but not feeding silage and feeding a lot of crop residues is a huge part of the problem. And so it was great to discuss this with those who came. And for many of them, it was the first time that it dawned on Africans who attended in great numbers, as well as people from the US, companies from the US, that there's a huge opportunity to develop silage production in Africa. I think I'll end with one story from one presentation from Dr. Shushem Guo, who spent a year with us in Florida, and then he's a professor in China. Well, he went to Wisconsin in 2013 to learn about silage production. And he comes from a province in China where 30% of the people were in poverty at the time. He went back and he started introducing silage to the provincial government. And they got one company to support them in silage making. After the first 1 or 2 years, the improvements in profitability, he said they were making 10 times more from making corn silage compared to making corn grain for human consumption. Everybody along the value chain was winning, was benefiting. He said it was so profitable that within a few years, 29 companies got into the business. He said the provincial district mayor declared that silage was the first industry that lifted many people out of poverty. And so that, was a remarkable outcome. Within about 7 years, this happened in China. And so we're learning from that lesson. And we're now also working with some of our colleagues in Africa to help to do the same thing. So, but it's not just for Africa, even for us here, improving our rations, making them more efficient, food safety, which is big with silage because of molds and mycotoxins and so on. All those factors are important, as well as realizing the importance of the milk and the meat in the diet. Everybody is entitled to their food choices. Whether they want to be a vegan or vegetarian, that's their own choice. But it's important to understand that the animal source foods, the meat, the milk, the eggs, they have critical micronutrients, macronutrients, that if they are not replaced in the diet, you can have some of the nutritional problems we see in Africa here in the US. And it's already happening. And so it's a big concern I have, both for Africa, but also here in the US, where I'm concerned that people avoid the animal products, but some are not doing the due diligence to make sure they're getting all the bioavailable micronutrients they would get from the animal products. So I will stop there, but I think silage is so important for livelihoods across the world.
And just to add one more point, Bola, you mentioned about the animal source food, and these animal source food, milk and meat, is coming from forage-fed animals.
Yes.
And that just shows how important forages are, not only for the livestock performance, for health, but also for production of animal source food, sustainable production of animal source food.
Yeah, we're used to quite a different reality here in the United States in terms of, first of all, food availability. That we do have nutrition deserts, food deserts within our cities. We need to improve that, but it's a completely different concept from what we see in other worlds. I think our audience is mostly producers, which would agree with us, and not people that might need to listen to this message. We're blessed here with a lot of food in our plates, and when we start picking about different production systems, and this is good, this is bad, yeah, for whom? Because there's a lot of people going hungry around the world that can benefit a lot of that. I also got excited from the agronomic side. I think there was some very interesting talks in alternative silages. We saw some silages with different legumes, or even with different processes that can be used. And in the United States, we normally think about silage. Corn silage comes first everywhere. And if you're in the north, some places in the west, alfalfa silage become important. But here, sorghum silage is also very important. And Dr. Rooney talked about there are environments, especially when there are limitations in growth, especially for drought, where sorghum becomes an extremely important crop. And I really like that talk about trying to fit the crop that you are growing to the conditions you have, not trying to grow corn silage and alfalfa silage everywhere. There is a lot of potential for those other crops. And then linking with the concept that Dr. McAllister mentioned about food waste and food loss, there is a great opportunity here to explore some of those other crops and byproducts in the silage making world and feeding world.
Yeah, that's very right, Marcelo. And what I remember is a talk from our keynote speaker, Dr. Ken Kalshar. And he did mention about making silage from the alternative crops that we have not tried earlier. And he showed very fascinating data that they can be used, and they can be used to support the performance of our livestock, both beef cattle as well as dairy cows. And I would just like to segue on the sorghum silage that you mentioned. I think there were a couple of abstracts that stood out for us. Was one coming from Mariana, North Florida Research and Education Center, in which I think the data was from Dr. DiLorenzo lab. And they have been promoting the use of sorghum silage for backgrounding cattle, and with a very good success. And they did share the data in our silage conference. So just wanted to share that on the sorghum silage as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something that often we need to remind ourselves, the potential of forage to replace concentrates and reduce the amount of concentrates we're using. And so alfalfa, or it doesn't have to be alfalfa in the southeast here, it can be rhizoma peanuts, And so there are a lot of forage options that we have that can help us to boost the nutritional value of our diets and reduce the protein supplementation, energy supplementation. Absolutely.
You bet. There are many opportunities, and you mentioned Perennial, you mentioned some of our forages here. Baleage was also another important topic that came up often in the abstracts, which you also had one of the leading speakers, talking about the evolution of baleage. I want to spend a little time in the probably the most submitted topic of silage additives, massive contributions from all across, and a lot of the industry partners with important technologies and important developments on the additive side. What did you find out on the additive side that really caught your attention?
Well, Lim Kong, who is one of the fathers of silage, gave a really nice presentation sharing about the efficacy of some of the existing products and then also some of the newer products on the market, and also emphasize the importance of some of the best management practices with silage. Inoculants, for instance, reminding ourselves that inoculants are living organisms. So you don't take a sachet out of the cooler and leave it on your truck bed in Florida in the hot sun all day. You will fry them to death. And so it's really important to make sure that right up to the point that you're applying the silage, it's there in the cooler. And then the best management practices. And also understanding the different types of inoculants, understanding that the application process is very important, and making sure you have a uniform distribution. All those different aspects are extremely critical to achieving the goals. And there are different inoculants, as he mentioned, whether you want it for shelf life, long shelf life, or you want it for preservation and preventing spoilage and yeast and heating and yeast and mold growth. So it was a really nice presentation. And of course, it's the most, what's the word? It's the most popular topic, I think, of all the abstracts in our silage conference. It's an area that is ripe for growth. One of the companies was sharing with us that they now have a high dry matter inoculant for high dry matter forage, which is a novel concept. And I think as we continue to work with them, we will also develop products that have even better enzymes for improving digestibility and improving utilization of our forage.
Yeah, and I think that on the high dry matter side is something very important for us here in Florida because of the challenges we have in siling some of the warm season perennial grasses.
I remember we published meta-analysis few years back, and we were always complaining that we have a lot of data on feed additives on silage inoculation, but we don't have the data on animal performance. And in this silage conference, I was so happy to see that now we are actually going a step further. We are not only looking at the forages, but we are also using those forages, that is the improved forage quality, hopefully, and then looking at the animal performance, whether it's a beef cattle or dairy cattle. So that was good to see as well.
Another thing that really caught my attention was that many of the silage world is way more connected between the private sector and the public sector, especially in research. There was a lot of connection there, way more than the pure forage, the forage side. So I was quite amazed by the number of companies participating in presenting abstract and the development. And the other thing that was very cool is a lot of people don't realize that, but biological processes are key for many of the products that we consume on a daily basis, including cheeses and yogurt and beer and wine. And some of the companies that participate are responsible for a big chunk of the wine, whiskey, and cheese production across the world. So we got to experience a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, that was a great experience as well.
So I think one of the very, very practical impacts for the people that are listeners into this podcast, because we're thinking about applied research and things that are coming out of the pipeline that are directly applied to the farmers. And I think one of the major impacts is the development of the new Milk 2024 equations by Dr. Ferrareto and his group in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think that presentation got a lot of traction, and it's been ever since Dr. Ferrato came up with Milk 2024 equation, because the previous equation was in Milk 2006, so that needed an update, and we are so glad that the equation is out. So just for our producers who'd like a brief context, is showing the potential of the forages based on the nutritive value, looking at what the fiber components, protein, starch component, and the digestibility values. And we put that in a formula that can predict how much milk this forages can support per acre of land. So we had a Milk 2006 formula that came out from Dr. Andy Shaver, if I'm not mistaken, Bola. So that came out from Dr. Andy Shaver's lab, and then now that Milk 2006 has been updated to Milk 2024, and hopefully we'll have the paper on that soon as well.
Yes.
And on a very practical note, I know Diwakar and Marcelo are doing this now, but back, in the day, Charlie Staples, the late great Charlie Staples, and I and Jose Santos would use the Milk 2006 information to help our producers determine which hybrids had the greatest potential and which ones should be used for early lactation cows, for backgrounding, for whatever. And I'm so grateful to Diwakar and Marcelo who are continuing that work and continuing to supply that much needed information to our producers.
Yeah, that's one of our actually biggest extension programs here is the variety testing, which I don't know if you know this, but now it became the official forage variety testing because we incorporate all the other forage varieties that are being tested. It's a partnership with the industry and with breeders from all across the Southeast and the United States also to test in our conditions the forages that are available in the market. For corn is a big deal because we have a lot of our dairies, well, virtually all of our dairies depending on corn silage. So basically we can provide an unbiased information on the performance of this corn and also sorghum. We expanded to millet. We're working with mixes. We have cool season forages. We even go to the dairies to test some in the dairy so that people can see. I'm going to make a plug in here because for listeners that are more interested in the variety trial, they can check our webpage. Easiest way to find it is just type UF Forage Team in your search engine, but you can also email us on forages@ifas.ufl.edu to get more information or talk to a local extension agent for more information on that. We always have some tours and field days coming up, corn silage field day in May, and also cool season forage tour in February here in Florida. For me, it was a very, very exciting conference, and I actually am looking forward to the next one. Bola, tell us a little bit more about what are the next step for the conference and where we're going.
Well, the next step was a huge surprise for me, but before I say anything about that one, I've had the privilege of, working here in Florida, but also going all over the world to collaborate with people, in Europe, in Brazil, Mexico, learning about silage production, bringing those lessons back to support our producers here. And, I've developed friendships all over the world. And my wife said to me before the conference, all your friends from all over the world are coming to Florida. So it was a huge, huge blessing for me, just personally, but also professionally. It was fantastic. And, to take them around to our producers, to the Griners, the Hendersons, and
Quincy.
Quincy Cattle Company. So shout out to all those producers for their hospitality. It was wonderful. It was insightful for our friends. So the shock for me was that the next conference is actually going to take place in Africa. That was very surprising. This committee that determines where the next conference will take place received a very strong bid from Nigeria, and many of the members of the committee had already given presentations to the Nigeria silage team. And so for the first time ever, this conference is going to move to Africa. So there is a lot of interest among a lot of the members to go to Africa. Obviously, questions came up like, what about security? And what about, what would it be like? What would the facilities be like? And the organizing team assured the audience that, there are many international conferences that take place at it. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're excited. And also, a neglected mention, another, for me, very important part was our panel during the conference. And it was a fantastic panel with colleagues that are in the field, harvesting silage, advising on silage, and helping producers to improve. But I mentioned that right now because one of our panelists, Michelle, when she left the conference, she mentioned two things: that she was so excited about the conference, on how good the content was, and applied to her business, and actually about going to Africa because she realized the potential that we can have in helping many people there in improving forage production and silage production. So it's pretty exciting for the potential to go to Africa for the next silage conference, to Nigeria, to the next silage conference. Diwakar, Bola, anything else from the conference you would like to share with our audience that we didn't comment today here?
I think maybe one last thing I would say is thanks to Diwakar, thanks to Marcelo, Ashley, and Jessica's team. It was a fantastic conference, and we've all been to many, but we had such resounding positive feedback. A lot of that was a testament to the hard work that had gone by, these people I've mentioned, to organize it. But it was very friendly atmosphere. It was a great networking opportunity for our students, and it just really gave. And some of our producers were present, so they also got some good information for their operations. It's always good when you go for those meetings and you come back with fresh ideas, with a spring in your step. Yeah. You think, wow, I'm really doing something important here. And I think that's the way people felt. So, yeah, very happy.
Yeah, very rightly said, Bola. I think at the end of the conference, we were more excited about the research and the ideas and, the forage research that is going on all across the world. So that was the take home for me. The another take home is that no matter how how challenging work is, if we have a good team, we can make it work.
And maybe I'll finish. I said that was the last. I'll finish with one anecdote. So when I initially saw the budget for the meeting, I'm a black person. I went white. But again, thanks to Marcelo and Diwakar, we were able to find a way. And thanks to the Animal Science Department and the Agronomy Department for vouching that they would support if we didn't raise the funds. But, my final comment is to thank our sponsors, because they came through for us big time, and were able to cover expenses. So thank you.
Yeah, it's great to be working with all the companies that not only participate financially in the event, but really made a difference coming here, participating, engaging with all the audience. I think that was one of the highlights of the event. Is, as I said, the environment that we created. It was just really good environment.
Totally agree.
Awesome. I really appreciate both of you coming to Cal Talks to share a little bit more about the Silage Conference. It was a very exciting event. For those more interested in the silage, in the results, in the abstracts of the Silage Conference, we'll put the link for the conference website in the description of this podcast. And also reach out to us to let us know what you think about this program. And if you want to know more information, follow us on our social media, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and also reach out to us through our email forages at ifas.ufl.edu. I hope you enjoyed this program. I hope to see you in our next episode of Cal Talks. Cal Talk Podcast was brought to you by the University of Florida Forage Team with technical support from the University of Florida College of Agriculture and Life Sciences Faculty Instructional Resource and Support Team. This episode was produced by Marcelo Valao, Olivia Maule, and Ashley Kanabrowski.